For all who comes to this goofy place, welcome.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode here on the Goofy Scoop podcast. We have a special guest here today, Mike Shul. I worked with this guy at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your backstory at the DCP and whatnot.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, like Grace said, or like Jeff said, my name's Mike. I kind of have an interesting story to my college program. So I'm also in the Air Force Reserve, and I originally had applied for the program for spring of 2018. And right when I finished my application and got my interview day, I found out I was being deployed deployed, I say, but I was being sent to England. So I did my interview like 2 days before I left and was like, hey,
Oh
like
no.
this is happening. And they're like, oh yeah, like that's fine. Just apply for the next semester. So I was like, all right. Um, so I applied then and got it, which was very cool. But yeah, it was weird because I was away from home for 6 months doing my military duty, came home for like a couple weeks, and then left again for another 6 months or whatever it was. So it was a lot of moving around and stuff like that, and a little homesick, which kind of affected me a little bit, but it was still very cool nonetheless. And I worked at Disney's Hollywood Studios in merchandise, and it was very interesting. I really didn't feel like I really got to fully enjoy it until probably like the second half. I think that's really about the time you and I started working together a lot more.
Mhm.
And maybe that's a direct correlation, maybe it's not. But as listeners might know, Jeff worked at the front of Hollywood Studios, which is Oscars and also Hollywood Boulevard. And for whatever reason, I was always getting put on working at Hollywood Boulevard, which was Mickey's of Hollywood, Celebrity Five and Dime, and that other store,
Keystone, yeah. Keystone Clothers.
yeah, Keystone, yep. And I don't know, I just like wasn't enjoying working at those places, and it just like it was weird. I don't know, and I never wanted to work in Oscars because they were always wearing like everyone always had like short sleeve shirt and shorts on, and I'm covered in tattoos. So I was like, I don't want to wear long sleeves and pants in Florida. So I always tried to avoid it. But
Outside, yeah.
yeah, outside. Yeah, and you're outside as well. So I always wanted to like avoid working there. And I don't know, I just kind of felt trapped, I guess. And I don't remember who, someone was telling me about wearing those like sleeves, those like white like compression sleeve things, and they have like make them that are like cool, like
Mhm.
insulated or whatever. So I bought a bunch of them, started trying to swap out to work at Oscars, and at like total 180 for like how I was experiencing the Disney college program, and it was crazy.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a brief little introduction, I guess. Um
And now it
yeah, it
doesn't
was
even make any difference. Like you can have your tattoos and it's
that's
fine.
yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? As someone who has a lot of tattoos, I don't know how that makes me feel. That
Really?
yeah, and that's probably not something you would expect, but having to go through that, I guess I understood how like why they didn't want anyone showing, because we're portraying what like Hollywood in the 1930s, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And you how many people had a full tattoo sleeve in the 1930s, right? Like no one.
Yeah. Very,
So
very
especially
few.
very, very few people, right? Exactly. So I understand why that was a policy, and I don't know. I'm torn about it.
Just yeah, torn. Because I mean, you're
Yeah, like
inked
I
up,
don't.
but at the
Yeah,
same
so
time,
like
you understood
mhm,
why it was set like that.
mhm. Maybe that's like the like military brain just being like, okay, like they tell you to do this, so whatever, just deal with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how I feel about it
I could see that.
totally.
Yeah, I was. That is a good point though, because I do remember not really meeting you, or I guess getting to have a full conversation with you until probably at least 2.5, 3 months into the program. And you obviously you are right. You worked at or on Hollywood Boulevard like the first half.
all the time. I was only ever scheduled to work there. It was, I don't know why. Because I also like very obviously didn't like it either. Like, so I just couldn't remember where things were all the time. I was constantly asking people for help.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why I was always getting scheduled there. And like I liked lifting things up and moving around and stuff. So I when like I finally decided to work at Oscars, it just like it was like perfect. I was always like doing the jobs no one else wanted to do. I'm like, oh, like sure, I'll take out the garbage. I'll, stack strollers for 6 hours. Like,
I
sure, I'll
was
go walk around, like whatever.
I
Like
was
it
about to
don't
say
matter
I
to
was
me.
gonna bring that up with like stacking strollers because we would have a board that we would look at on like
Mhm,
who's like who had the role for that night during the dump where the people would be leaving
mhm,
the park after the night shows, whatnot. And every time I would either be the valet or stacker usually. Like I was
mhm,
very, very rarely on the line or, on the microphone because I think I
mhm.
was on the microphone maybe one time. Didn't even really like it till like the last 5 minutes and when I started
Yeah.
actually getting used to it. But
Mhm.
I would see your name as like a stacker, or I would be a stacker with you, and I'd be like, yes, Mikey. Because like you were one
We
of
were
the
we were a
fastest and
solid squad, dude,
yeah,
and like
it's just
we would
efficient.
communicate well too.
Yeah, because there'd be some people.
Mhm.
I'm not going to throw their names out there, but there would be some
Yeah.
people where it's just like, come on, we're stacking strollers. Why are you over there, talking to people?
Either they weren't engaged or just like physically just like didn't have it. And that's fine, but like that's everyone has their role.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was definitely like the stack and dream team, not gonna
Oh yeah,
lie.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm. But yeah, I think you mentioned with the microphone. I'm pretty sure they were gonna have me do it one time, and like I
You
started
got out of
talking,
it.
and someone literally took it from me and was like, "Yeah, you're not doing this." All right, cool. They're like, "Go back to the strollers."
It didn't
All
hurt my
right.
feelings at all. I'll be at
Yeah.
stacker.
So
100%. Yeah. So
no,
when
but that
when it came to your program, which housing complex were you at? Because I don't remember.
Chatham.
Chatham. Okay. What did you
Yeah,
think of Chatham overall?
I liked it, and it's interesting. I know like you guys have talked about like the Flamingo Crossing and everything. So um I liked it. Like the gym wasn't good. I would always walk to Patterson to work out. I was like, I don't know, I have this weird obsession with going to the gym. So
It's
like
not a
if I
bad
don't do it,
obsession at
it's like,
all.
yeah, but it like so I would wake up in the morning, go to the gym, and that was fine. But as we all know, the four housing complexes have closed and now they're just like apartments
Mhm.
basically.
Hmm.
And one of my roommates and a couple of our friends that like we had made while we were on the program actually live in the same bit room that we had did the college program, and they moved into Chatham and they live in the same exact room, or
So
like like whatever that we live
Wait,
in.
that's
I
weird.
was gonna say that's
Isn't that
weird
insane?
slash really, really cool because did they get
Yeah.
to pick the apartment or like how was it? Like
I
was it
don't
more
know
so
the
like what's
full
open or did they get to be like, can we have room, blah blah blah?
I don't fully know. Maybe I wasn't fully paying attention. I was like awestruck, like, oh, that's so sick that you guys get to do that. So I don't fully know the process, but I know that they somehow, or maybe they're in the same building. I don't know if maybe it's the same exact room, but yeah, they live there, and that's
Either
pretty
way, that's
awesome.
close enough if it's the same building. Like it's still cool. Like
Mhm.
you
And the
can still
layout's
be
probably
living.
also the same too.
Oh,
So
100%. Yeah.
Yo,
mhm.
I would move back to Patterson right now. Let's do it.
Did Patterson? So Patterson had the best gym, right? Because I'm not gonna lie, I
It was
stopped
better than
working
Chatham,
out.
that's for sure.
Yeah,
Patterson had the best everything, the best
Mhm.
balcony views,
The
the
pool
best
looked really nice
gym.
because
We
the
had a
pool
great
was right outside the
pool.
gym. Yeah.
The best people lived there, me.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
Yeah, because
Can't argue with that logic.
yeah, I mean, makes sense.
the college program stopped me, or it ended up causing me to stop working out just because
Mhm.
this I stayed at Vista.
Yeah.
The gym was so small.
Mhm.
Mm,
And you know what? Like looking back, so I am the kind of person who always like, no matter what I do, I try to think about like maximizing the value of whatever it is. So like
hmm.
my girlfriend and I, like we go on vacation to the parks or whatever, and I'll always be like, what do you want to do? I'm gonna like plan it so that we do every single thing that you want to do, so that we get like the most. And she's gonna be like, listen, like just chill. Like we're gonna be at Disney World. It's fine. But like looking back, I feel like if I would have spent less time like going to the gym in the morning, maybe like, oh, I'm gonna spend the morning at like Epcot or like something like that, I think that would have been cool. And you're still like, you're walking around all day, like in the heat. So
Yeah.
I don't think those
Good walking
gains would have
cardio
made
for sure.
That's what I
definitely.
did. That's literally what I did. I was at the parks every day. Anytime
Mhm.
I was off, I was in the parks.
I don't know how, like I obviously like didn't track steps or anything, but I know people said they would walk like just at work, they would walk miles and like
Mhm.
miles and miles.
Oh,
Like
100% because
Mhm.
package pickup after when I started working on my extension, I was package pickup. And even on the walks, there'd be some shifts that I'd have like one walk, maybe not even one walk. And then there'd be shifts where I'd have 3 or 4 walks. And just by doing that, it just added like 3 or 4 miles. And
oh
or
yeah,
if I'd have to
easily.
go get ice if I was stocking at park arrival, like
Take
it's
some
like a
extra ice
quarter
and put on your
mile.
knees, huh?
Yeah, it's a quarter it's a quarter mile just to go to the ice machine and then
Just
another
one
quarter
way.
mile back. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's half
Yeah.
a mile right there just to get
Mhm.
ice. And then I have to go disperse the ice.
Mhm.
So,
But you're doing it at Disney World, so like there's worse places you could be like getting ice walking a quarter
oh,
mile,
I was
right?
smiling the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely way worse things. Like the one thing that I think was my favorite thing about like work would be around the holidays when they would have I I can't remember what it's called, but when they have the projection shows on the tower
Mhm.
and like I can like hear it like playing back in my head just like
Dun,
doo
dun,
doo
dun.
ookie dook and
Yeah.
like the Swedish chef and like it's
Yep.
that time of year. Like my name's Olaf and I like please let me finish and I like warm hugs.
Yep,
And
exactly.
like that would like make my day just walking outside and hearing that because our break room for I think it was five and dime was right like there.
Mhm.
You could hear it. It was
Yep.
wonderful.
I was gonna say behind Oscars and behind Five and Dime,
Yeah,
you could hear
exactly.
it.
Because they're
Yeah.
right next to each other.
Mhm. Yeah,
I would have a
because
bad day.
it's funny that you say that because I think during the holidays we had a love hate. I know I did and a lot of other people did. I can't speak for you, but there was a love hate relationship with that projection show on Sunset Boulevard.
I had heard a lot of people say that 'cause they're like, oh, it's so repetitive, and it's like,
Hmm.
like I'm sick of hearing the Muppets or whoever is on there. Like
100%. Yeah.
who are the elves? Um,
Yeah. What
some
is that?
landing,
Oh, prep and
prep and
landing.
landing,
Prep
prep
and
and
landing.
landing.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like oh, I'm sick of hearing these guys or whatever. But I'm like, I don't know, like this ain't getting old. Like this, they don't do this while you're launching airplanes in the desert. So I
I was gonna say that was my biggest thing because as soon as you said yeah, like the noises and everything, I like how Gray did the bells. Like we all did something different. Like Gray was like,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun.
everyone had a different thing they could associate with it. But yeah, the
Yeah.
belt, like how they start the thing. Yeah,
And then
exactly.
mine is the for the Frozen. It's like dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun.
The
But
Swedish chef lives rent free in my brain.
oh
I
yeah,
don't understand it.
Mm.
yeah. I would go home and just hum it or just
You
like
hear that in
whistle
your
it until I
sleep,
fell
man. You're
asleep. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was bad. Love hate relationship with it for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think that's pretty good for Disney College Program with Mike. Mike, you also did want to talk about another topic here on the Goofy Scoop podcast,
Mhm.
which is Disney's Hollywood Studios identity crisis,
Yeah.
which we did touch up a little. I think we like grazed the surface in a past episode. I think we should definitely go more in depth on this episode.
Mhm.
Is there like anything that you specifically wanted to get started with before Gray and I have questions for you? Because I know that
Yeah.
you have a lot of notes and a lot of information to throw on us today.
Yeah, I wanna start off by saying like Hollywood Studios is easily without even it being close, my favorite park, hands
Mhm.
down. It always has been. It was the first park I visited when I was a kid. I have always Hollywood Studios has always been number one. And I think that's why I like am critical about it because like I want it to stay like the best and I want it to be everyone's favorite. So
Do you
that's how
still
I'd
think
like
it is
to.
the best?
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say just
Well,
because it's your favorite doesn't mean it's like the best. You
okay.
know what I mean?
So I don't know.
Mike's getting real.
He's gonna like
Yeah,
jump
I
into
don't know. I
something
don't
like
know.
He's like, should I say it? Should I not say it?
It's hard. I mean, obviously, like, I mean, you guys have talked to it all the time. Like, it's hard not to say Magic Kingdom because it has the most stuff.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
but
like
yeah,
when you think
so
of Disney World, you think of Magic Kingdom.
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like it's the centerpiece. And
Mhm.
not only that, but it's like, well, yeah, it's been there the longest, it's got the most things, it's what everyone thinks about. So it's hard not to say, and that's like where ideas have to like come off of like, hey, like this is something good, let's turn and do this. But I don't know. It's not my favorite. It's not my least favorite, but I don't know. I can't answer that. Can't answer it.
One of the simplest questions, and Mike is already somewhat stumped on how to answer.
Yeah. I don't know if Hollywood Studios is the best. Well, that's what we're gonna get into is like, what has made me say, I don't know.
Yeah. Or like the fact that we want to talk about why there is identity crisis for sure.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
All right, well, lay it on us. Jump into it.
All right, so clear my throat. So in 1984, this goes back. That's the year where Michael Eisner and Frank Wells were appointed the chairman and COO of the Walt Disney World, or well, of Disney. And Michael Eisner, it was the first time they had people from outside of the company take over. And Michael Eisner came from Paramount Pictures while Frank Wells came from Warner Brothers. So they brought different perspectives into, the Disney parks or the Disney company, I should say. And so there's a like rumor, or well, I don't know if you want to call it rumor, I guess, where when Eisner was working for Paramount, he was in the meeting for the original pitch for Universal Studios Florida.
okay.
And so he like had that idea in his brain already because it was already pitched at his previous place of employment. Um, then when he came to Disney, they had an idea to make another pavilion at Epcot that was based on like the movies, I guess, like or like shows or like screenplays, something like that. And it was a studio pavilion, basically they were gonna call it at Epcot. And he's like, in his brain having this, idea of like the competition, he's like, why don't we just make a whole nother park? This is a great idea. Let's instead of making it just a pavilion at a park we already have, let's make it its whole new park.
Which was a great idea.
Yeah, it's incredible, hands down. So the original concept of Disney's MGM Studios, for those of you that may not know, was that it was supposed to be a working studio and Hollywood backlot tour. They produced, this is where the notes come in. They produced stuff such as The Lottery with Bette Midler. These are movies: Splash 2, Ernest Saves Christmas, and the new Mickey Mouse Club at the time. And here's a little trivia question for you, Jeff, because I used to use this trivia question at the parks all the time when I worked there. There were three Disney animated films that were fully produced at Hollywood Studios. Do you guys know what they are?
I don't.
He said, I don't even have a clue.
No,
I
I have
just
no idea. I don't even want to
watched
try.
I just watched something on Disney Plus that mentioned one of them.
Is okay. Well, actually, let me ask a quick question real quick to
Okay,
possibly
sure.
be able to answer. Is
All
this
right.
back when it was MGM and it was a
Yes.
working? Okay,
Mhm.
then I have no
Yeah.
idea.
So the three movies are Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, and Brother Bear.
Okay,
And they
wow.
actually and they actually stopped producing movies there like shortly after Brother Bear came out. So I don't know if those are directly correlated. Did Brother Bear flop because they stopped caring about that experience at the park? Are those two things related at all? That I don't know. I can't
I,
answer.
I was gonna
Brother
say
Bear is highly underrated though.
I know I always
I
forget
agree.
about Brother Bear. Brother Bear, yeah, that's a really good movie. And
It
is
is
it?
really good.
Since we're kind of on the topic as well, I don't know if somebody was pulling my leg. Maybe you heard Mike. Was Moana made in Ops? I want to say it's Ops 2 or Ops
Ops
3.
3, I think.
Was Moana made back
I
then?
don't know. I heard that rumor too. I don't know if that's true or not. I really don't, because from my understanding is that they totally shut down those operations and now it's just the theme park.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. So someone don't come at me, too much if that's wrong.
You're the
But
one with all the facts. Nobody's coming at you.
I don't have all the facts because I don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know about.
I do remember hearing that rumor though.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I know I'm not crazy for hearing that. I just didn't know if they were pulling my leg or not. But yeah, I didn't know about Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, and Brother Bear.
Yeah. So and also originally the park was only supposed to be like a half day experience where you would literally just tour, do like a backlot tour. And then I guess every time, and this is from, I guess before I go on, my citations for where a lot of this information came from is a
He
couple
was so
YouTube
ready.
channels, Yesterworld, Defunct Land, and Theme Park History, but also, Gray, you already brought it up, was the Imagineering story on Disney Plus, was where I got some of this information too. And in the Imagineering story, they talk about how Eisner was there all the time, just like, checking the progress in the park or whatever. And I guess every time he would go there, they'd have another idea of like, oh, let's add this, let's add that, whatever, which is what turned it from a half day experience to like a full theme park. And then, not super related, but kind of, but in 1987, which is before when the park opened, was when Disney partnered with Lucasfilms to create Star Tours at Disneyland, which they then later brought in, which is one of the projects that they added to Hollywood Studios, which opened on December 15th, 1989. Now,
Okay.
again, going back, oh, well, it was a soft opening, December 15th, May 1st, 1989. Wait, hang on. Hang on. May 1st, 1989 is when the park opened. Star Tours at Walt Disney World was December 15th, 1989.
Okay.
So notes were a little off there.
No worries.
But yeah, so I guess the last thing I want to start off with before getting into the issues or whatever is what the original dedication plaque under the cameraman statue that's almost like at the center of the park.
Mhm.
This is what Eisner had said when the park opened. The world you have entered was created by the Walt Disney Company and is dedicated to Hollywood. Not a place on a map, but a state of mind that exists wherever people dream and wander and imagine. A place where illusion and reality are fused by technological magic. We welcome you to a Hollywood that never was and always will be. And I find that very touching. But that really, like, I don't know if, when y'all had been to the park or not the first time, but that's really what it was.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you had all these, the backstage stuff and the great movie ride, which incredible, which literally took you into the movies. Like it really was. And the citizens of Hollywood, it was all about Hollywood and shows and stunts and all this other stuff.
Coming from a broadcasting background, I've always loved studios like for that reason, like seeing the behind the scenes camera work and how they do different stunts and all that kind of stuff. And as studios gets farther and farther away from that, it like really disappoints me. But I also like some of the new stuff that they brought in, so it's like
Yeah, I understand. I know the feeling. So I noticed you have your Galaxy's Edge shirt on.
I do.
How do you feel about that?
Fun fact, I don't like Star Wars at all. I'm not a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
I think Galaxy's Edge is cool, but like I'm not a Star Wars fan. I have this t-shirt. I put it on because it's the only shirt that I have that's like something in Hollywood Studios. But also,
okay, fair enough.
This was like a cast member special shirt thing when we were there. Because that's when Galaxy's Edge opened, and so I was like, oh, I want that.
Okay.
So like that's what this is. But yeah, I actually don't like Star Wars at all. So I personally think Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is a waste of time and a waste of money.
I'm gonna have to agree
Rise
with you
of
on that.
Resistance
I'm
is
not
cool. It's like a good ride.
Mhm.
But like, I think the land is very immersive. I think they did a really good job with that. But as like, I have no idea what's going on. I've seen the movies. I don't understand them. I don't I can't get into them, so it's like not something exciting for me. I know I'm gonna get canceled for this, but it's just like I don't get it. So to me, that was a waste. But on the other side, I do love Toy Story Land.
Oh, me too. Toy
Like
Story
that's
Land is
my favorite.
incredible.
Yeah,
Bro, Woody's lunchbox,
so
man,
good, right?
amazing. Anything you get there, you get the lunchbox tart, fire. You
Yeah.
get the tachos, you get the I just had the last time I was there, it was some people were telling us to get the grilled cheese and the tomato
A
soup.
simple grilled
Man,
cheese and tomato soup from Woody's Lunchbox is like it's so
amazing. It
good
doesn't
for
make
no
sense why is it
reason
so
at
good.
all.
Yeah,
Yes.
it doesn't make sense. But also like just like the small like the details in it. So like you can see giant footsteps in like because you're supposed to be in the Woody's backyard. You see giant footsteps. And like this the everything is supposed to be made to scale so that you literally feel like you're a toy,
Mhm.
which I've heard the things criticized about Toy Story Land, but I really think Toy Story Land is more immersive than Galaxy's Edge. I
Oh wow.
I'm also not a fan of Galaxy's Edge. I
Yeah.
We just recently got back. I was on a work trip in Tampa, so I was like, okay, we'll drive to Orlando. I have
Yeah, you had to
a
sneak
day.
over there for at least a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was like, I had a 2 days off. I'm like, if I'm gonna do Disney, I want to like, not be rushed or anything. So we went to
Yeah.
Universal, and I got to experience the Harry Potter stuff that's over there, and that kind of solidified that I don't think Galaxy's Edge is that cool
Okay.
because like even the Harry Potter and that's it's not perfect, but it's very immersive and like
Yeah.
the ride. There's one extra ride. There's you can do the wand experience, which it's way less money and you can actually do stuff with the wand. Whereas like I have my $200 lightsaber, which now you have to pay for the bag that it comes in or whatever. Like which when
Mhm.
I got it, you didn't have to. So that was like a an extra gift. But you can't like what am I gonna do? Run around and start hitting people with lightsaber in the park? Like,
No.
Yeah.
oh no. I mean I guess I could do that, but then
There
I'd
goes
also get
Mike
thrown out
again.
of the
I
park.
will
Yeah.
say I think Disney puts a lot into like things that you have to go out of your way to do. Like I just recently went to Disney and one of the things that like came up on the resort TV thing was like in Galaxy's Edge, make sure you download the Disney Play app so you can
Oh
interact
yeah.
with like and I was like I don't really care about Star Wars. I'm not going to do that. But I think Disney relies a lot on like, oh, they have the Disney Play app so they can do all
Mhm.
these extra things. But like that's going to kill my phone battery, which like I'm
Yep.
trying to save it for pictures and video. Like
Mhm.
I'm not wasting that.
I've never used the Disney Play app.
No.
I've
I
And
never
think
have.
and why we were discussing Galaxy's Edge with Mike bringing up the whole wand scenario at and Harry Potter's world or
Mhm.
Harry Potter's world at Universal Studios. Why can't they do something similar when it comes to Galaxy's Edge? And
So
you could buy
oh,
something
it's
like a wristband or something that you
mhm.
can put on your hand, and instead of using a wand, you can do the force, and it'll trigger something in the area. Like why
Call
can't they
this
do something
guy.
It's
like
an
that?
idea.
Call this guy. Wait,
Yeah.
get Chapek on the phone.
I want
Um,
Iger.
now
I'll talk to Iger.
the now so one thing that so I guess shouldn't be super critical because I guess the droids can interact with each other and also interact with things in the park as well.
Which is
I
really
Yeah.
cool.
I've never seen it happen and I don't totally know how it works, but still a droid's like over $100 too. So
hmm
and at
Yeah.
least
And
you can do stuff with it, but
to bring it back to like originally where this was coming from too is like Galaxy's Edge, cool, it's immersive. Same way with Toy Story Land. But like Hollywood Studios is behind the scenes. But
right,
now being in these immersive lands, you are
you're in it.
in the stories
Mhm.
rather than watching them from the outside of how they were created, which I
True.
think is interesting and different.
I was
That's
gonna
it.
say, do you think that that's a good take on it, or do you think that, I mean, with the whole identity crisis, do you think that that is a good direction to go, and they should slowly change the whole park to go that way, or should it kind of keep that nostalgia backlot? Hey, this is how we do this. This is how we do that scenario, and like taste for family fun.
That's certainly a more optimistic way to look at it, which I guess I had never considered, or never like put deep thought into. Um, so that I mean that is a good point. I wrote something down where there was you know what? It was in 1996 was when the theme park really started to change from the like actual, behind the scenes and stuff to just they changed the theme to experiencing the magic of movie making.
Okay.
So, and it's in wherever I saw that they had mentioned that the um the rise of DVD bonus features actually kind of outdated the behind the scenes stuff where you could see and even now more than ever, like you go on Disney Plus and you're watching the Book of Boba Fett, and then after the episode, the next thing is like watch the behind the scenes of how this episode was made. So I guess that's a good point. Is maybe they're trying to by also boosting experiencing those things on their streaming service, which they're pumping a ridiculous amount of money into.
Oh yeah.
You can see all that stuff from home and then go experience like the product of that in the park. That's a good point.
Okay, so let's talk about something that like kind of does both and is like at this point the park icon, the Hollywood Tower Hotel. I think when you like are first going like on the Tower of Terror, you get the like, this is the story, this is what happened, you are watching it, you are behind the scenes, and then it's like, just like that happened, now let's put you on the elevator and see what happens. Mwahaha. So it like kind of does both, which I think is interesting, and especially since now Tower of Terror has become the icon of this park.
Thank
You
God.
can't
Yes.
like you can't get away from either. Like you have both the thrilling side of being in the story, but also like a little bit of behind the scenes stuff.
You pretty much just described why the Tower of Terror is the best Disney ride.
Yes.
And I will
I
die on that
1000%
hill.
disagree, but
When it comes to when it comes to theming, interacting with actually riding, they nailed it with Tower of Terror. Now, is it my favorite Disney ride? No, but when it comes to theming mixed with riding the actual attraction, yes, by far Tower of Terror. I will die on the hill with.
Yeah, I'm not saying favorite, not favorite. It's the best Disney ride because it has every element of what you want a good Disney attraction to be. It has it.
Mhm.
It has the storytelling. It has the immersion. It has a little bit of dark ride elements to it, and then it also has that excitement.
Oh yeah.
There's probably a lot of other things that
okay,
I'm forgetting
so
that it always mentions.
other than like the adrenaline from like the actual drop, which I despise, but it's fine.
Yeah,
I
I've
also
heard you
feel
say
like
it in the past.
a million times, and I'll say it a
Yeah.
million times more.
Mhm.
I feel like there's like Mickey's Runaway Mickey and Minnie Runaway Railway. I just recently rode that for the first time, and I felt so in the story. Like from the pre-show going into the ride, throughout the entire ride, it doesn't have the adrenaline that
Mhm.
Tower of Terror has, but I
Yeah.
feel like it still has the immersion to it. And I guess like the adrenaline thrill-seeking part is like what makes it like a little bit stronger. But I feel like there are other newer rides that are really putting you into that. I think Ratatouille's Remy's Adventure, whatever it's called.
That I haven't done yet,
I
and
was gonna say I didn't get to ride it either.
very excited to
It's pretty
experience
good.
that because
It's pretty good.
I have heard that it is incredible. Like you said, the immersion, it puts you in there.
Mhm.
And one thing that I think Universal gets criticized for a lot is how it relies, and Disney kind of does too, relies too heavily on the screen projections
Yeah.
in their attractions as opposed to, they kind of ditched the date that brought them to the dance, so to speak, where it was, rides like Pirates and Haunted Mansion that had hundreds of animatronics and like physical set pieces involved in something, where Ratatouille has a balance of the both.
I
Oh, yeah.
think unfortunately Disney is a lot of their newer rides are going that way.
Mhm.
Mickey and Minnie's is like a lot of screens. Remy's is a lot of screens.
Which
Like
doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. And I think it's
Mhm.
easier to do attractions that way. You get a lot more, like you can build that so quickly, like a lot faster than actually physically building the things. But
Oh
I
yeah.
also don't want like every single ride to be the same layout, just like a
Mhm.
different picture on the movie screen that's happening.
Right. Yeah. And that's where like that immersion, like you were talking about, comes into place. Like I've seen like glimpses of ride-throughs for Ratatouille where,
Mhm.
you know, there's these giant screens that kind of do like basically like the background or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
there's also giant set pieces that like,
Mhm.
you know, make it feel just as much physical like you're there,
Yeah, that's true.
that just kind of like supplement the screen. So it's not
Yeah.
just a screen with you in front of it.
Right.
Because yeah, and I mean with the way technology is too, like why would you not want to utilize something that moves so fluid
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see
That's
that.
true.
Yeah.
or stuff, you know? But yeah, I think unfortunately, and I think y'all had mentioned this in the past where because the Great Movie Ride was such a beloved attraction, it makes it extremely difficult for people to accept Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And I am definitely guilty of that because like the
Oh
Great
yeah, me
Movie
too.
Ride was so it's for someone like my girlfriend never experienced it. So me trying to like explain to her and just like, no, this ride because she likes Mickey and Minnie's ride. Like, how can you not? It's cute, it's
Yeah.
Oh
fun,
yeah,
whatever.
it's a great
But I'm
ride.
always
Yeah.
just like, it's not the Great Movie Ride. And she's like, I don't understand. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to like, you know, explain that.
Yeah. Well, see, like the first time I ever rode Mickey and Minnie's Runaway, right? It was during one of my lunch breaks. I don't remember if it was like a 30 or 15, but it was
So
like
before
before,
COVID.
yeah, on my
Okay.
program. Yeah, like
Yeah.
one of
During
my
your lunch break? What?
yeah, one of
What
my
kind of life did we live, you
What
it
guys?
kind of
was
job can
What?
you have where you're just like, yo, I'm about to take my 30 minutes. I'm about to go just ride Mickey and Minnie's.
well,
I'll be
see,
right back.
it was great because I was in I want to say I was in take 5, and one of my just in case they get I don't want to get them in trouble, but I won't say names. So it was one of my leaders and 2 of my coordinators, and they're like, "Hey, Jeff, we're about to go ride the new ride before it opens. Like, do you want to go with us?"
Yeah,
I would be an
absolutely.
idiot if I said no. You know, like I
Yeah.
can eat a
Yeah,
sandwich later. So I went with
Right.
them and rode
that's
it.
true.
And I remember the whole time sitting there going, wow, this is really cool. But I missed the Great Movie Ride.
Yeah.
Mm,
And once I got off of that ride, they're like, what did you think? Like, we love it. It's so great. And I remember telling them, it's a great ride, but it's not the Great Movie Ride. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Almost
Okay,
like
so
at what cost?
let
yeah.
me ask you a question. Do you do the same thing when you walk into Toy Story Land or Galaxy's Edge and you're like, oh, this is great, but it's not the backlot tour. Oh, this is great, but it's not the stunt show.
No.
Like,
No.
okay. So is it because like Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land are like completely brand new things? Or like, or is it because like Mickey and Minnie's is a different ride? It's something new, but it's like still in the exact like same building and everything kind of like still reminds you of the Great Movie Ride. And so I feel like it's hard to like keep going, get away from that because it
Because
was
all the
something so
reminders
iconic.
are still there.
It's hard
Right.
it's really hard to break up with that nostalgia because there's such
Mhm.
an like an emotional connection there for me when it comes
Yeah.
to the Great Movie Ride. Like I remember,
Yeah.
you know, like sitting in my mom's lap or like sitting in my dad's lap when I was super young, you know, like 6, 7 years old and riding it for the first time. And then, you know, it's like 4 or 5 trips after that. That would be one of the attractions that we would look forward to sitting
Yeah,
in a
that's the
row of
number
us 4.
one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I remember the last time I rode the Great Movie Ride. It was right before I went on my first deployment. The military has a program called the Yellow Ribbon Program where they basically send service members to these conventions to kind of like educate them on the deployment process. And the pre-deployment one I went to was in Orlando. Brought my mom because like I was, you know, I was young, single at the time, and still living at home. And so I was like, okay, like we're gonna be in Orlando. Let's go to my mom loves Disney. I love Disney. Like, let's go. And yeah, that was the first we like ran there when
Yep.
we could go to Hollywood
Mhm.
Studios. And
Yeah.
it was yeah, it was sick. It's hard to put that down. I actually have a story about the Chinese theater specifically. you guys may or may not know this. I learned this on my college program. I don't remember if it was in On with the Show or if
I think I know where you're going with this. If it is what you're going to talk about, it is definitely on with the show.
okay, yeah, and
Because I already
it
knew it
actually
before on with the show, and then I
okay.
heard it in on with the show, and I was like confirmed. I was like,
I didn't know that, but like the story made me like it got me a little emotional. So for those of you that may not know, the Chinese theater at Hollywood Studios is almost a direct replica to the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. There's a couple things that they did a little bit different so that I don't know, they wouldn't get in trouble or if
copyright,
it
I
was in the
guess. Yeah.
contract. Yeah, something like that. They had to make things just a little bit different on the outside. Um, one of the things that they themes that they kept was keeping handprints and signatures in the pavement in front of the building. And there's a lot of different ones. There's Disney legends, there's different legends of Hollywood, but there's also like Mickey and Minnie and like Donald Duck and like Jim Henson and Kermit the Frog, but there's also real life people. One of those people has theirs done only at Hollywood Studios and refused to get theirs done in Hollywood, which is Audrey Hepburn. So is this it, Jeff?
No, I thought you were going to tell a different story, but I'll go ahead and let you
Okay.
tell your story, and then I'll
Okay.
clarify with what I thought you were going to talk about.
Okay. So apparently Audrey Hepburn was never invited to get her handprint done at the original Chinese theater in Hollywood. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. But Disney had asked her to do hers at Hollywood Studios. And she was so moved by that and it was such an emotional thing because she was being recognized for it that, she, did it. It was a whole thing. She was like happy, crying, whatever. And refused afterwards, it got so much publicity in like the paper and whatever that the original Chinese theater was like, oh, like they like had to get it back. Like, oh, we need to go
Of
do this
course,
because they're
yeah.
making us look real bad. And she refused to do it because she was like, no, like I already have my handprints done at Disney, so like I'm good.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
really
which
awesome.
It's
I
very touching.
honestly I forgot about that story until you just told it.
Yeah.
But no, I thought the story that you were going to talk about was how the original Chinese theater in California had a mishap, like a fire, and then they had
That's
to
another thing
borrow
too. Yeah.
the blueprints
Mhm.
from Disney to rebuild the Chinese. I thought that was the story that you were going to tell, but yeah, the
No,
Audrey
but that's a
Hepburn.
good point too.
Yeah, the Audrey Hepburn story. That's a really really cool story.
Mhm. And I couldn't remember who it was. I did have to look that up on the internet because I couldn't remember. I'm like, I know who it is. I thought it was someone else who I'm not going to mention because I feel very embarrassed that I thought it was this person.
Yeah.
But I couldn't remember it. I had to do a little bit of digging. But yeah, I remember hearing that story. I think it was on with the show. Um, but yeah, that was very cool. And it just kind of shows the impact that the company in general just has on society.
Oh yeah.
Where
Well, us
you know,
us three can
Mhm.
prove that they've had an impact on us for sure.
yeah, three
Yeah, that's
people from
true.
3 different places in the country just like sitting here talking about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it impacted us enough
Yeah.
to meet up on Zoom and on a podcast and talk about it.
Exactly.
But yeah, back to the, like the crisis and everything. Gray and I have definitely talked about it, but I want to get your input and your feedback and your opinion. What things would you change that's going on in Hollywood right now? Like if an attraction, a show, whatever the situation is, I mean, what would you want to change or what would you want to keep? What do you think is a good thing? What do you think is a bad thing?
So basically everything before like the Chinese, well, I like the Chinese theater, but everything before that slash like before the launch bay have to keep. And it's amazing. The theming when you first walk into, even like when you're waiting outside and you see those green, I don't know what they're called, the structures, stands, but you
I
like
like
walk through to get to.
like with
Yeah,
the bus stops and everything.
yeah,
All of
like
that's similar structure.
you see that and you're just like, oh,
Yep.
this is amazing. It gets me fired up. Like I'm pretty sure Ashley takes videos of me when I'm over there waiting because I get like jacked up, dude. It's awesome. But like that stuff is amazing, and the theming is so spot on. I remember, not to get too off topic, but I remember we were doing a parking lot walk one time. We're coming back from it.
Which I
And
weirdly loved those.
they were awesome. Like it wasn't as cool as in the park, but
No.
it was still cool. Excuse me. And there was like a maintenance guy like sitting on the curb or something like that. And I walked up and I was like, "Oh, it's like, sir, do you need help? Are you all right? Like, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just painting the curb." And I'm like, "What? You're painting the curb?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I have a whole checklist of like stuff I have to paint every night. There's stuff I have to paint every other night. There's stuff I have to like do every 3 days. Like, and I just the level of detail is incredible.
Mhm.
But like all that stuff have to keep. You have to keep the Beauty and the Beast show at the I, amphitheater. What I don't remember
I don't
the
remember the name of the
theater that
theater.
it's
I can tell you
called.
exactly
Yeah,
where it's at, but I don't know the name of it.
same. I wonder if I have it written down. Interesting fact about that is, I guess the day that the Beauty and the Beast show released on Broadway is actually the same day that it released in theaters.
Huh.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
no, yeah. So
That's
they're the
very
same date.
interesting.
It's weird that they would do that, but that Broadway show actually was the inspiration to start Disney on Broadway because it was so successful.
Mm.
Okay.
But anyway, so that Phantasmic is the best nighttime show, so you have to keep that. Um oh, I saw
Real,
you. Migos.
yeah, you got a quick response out of me. I got to ask this: HEA, Happily Ever After, or Fantasmic? If one had to go,
Phantasmic.
which one's going?
Phantasmic's got to stay.
Phantasmic's got to stay.
Phantasmic is my favorite show, and that not saying I don't like Happily Ever After because that Happily Ever After it brought me to my knees a few times, but like that, but like I don't know there has to be some sort of like childhood nostalgia with me and Phantasmic because that show and like I see it like when my girlfriend and I go to watch it too, like the same thing. Like she thinks it's just so incredible, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And now with it coming back, there's rumors that the Maleficent, the dragon, is not just going to be a head on a cherry picker. It's going to resemble that of the Disneyland one, where they have a full dragon animatronic,
Oh wow. Okay.
which will be incredible if that's the case because the venue is just super cool. The music is awesome. Like the story is amazing. It's inspiring. Like, yeah, you got it. You
Yeah.
goes da, 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 da. Like I listen to it all the time. When I need to get into my happy place or I need to get into the zone, I listen to the finale and
Yep.
um yeah, so
Phantasmic always helped my mood, especially when we were working there. You know,
mhm,
because I would always get a little bit, well, not always, but if I did get frustrated working at Oscars, you know, and I'd just be kind of like upset or a little grumpy because I had a bad guest that I had to deal with, or you know, maybe just wasn't like the best setting or the situation that night, whatever it was. I would go back and have like a 15, and I would hear Phantasmic, you know, before the dump happened, before
right.
everybody started leaving, and it's like da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And
It's
I'm
just
just like,
hard
I
not
just
to like
find myself
vibe with
like,
it.
it's like, you know, I'm like
Mhm.
frowning, like making an ugly face, and it's like next thing you know, I'm like smiling
Yeah, you're like
backstage, like
have Bobby get
da, da,
into it.
da, da.
You just see Sorcerer Mickey with his hands like this. And you're just
Oh
like,
yeah,
I like it could be worse.
100%.
Um, I also really obviously I would bring the Great Movie Ride back. And I'm not saying that I would want Mickey and Minnie's to like go away, but I just don't think it fits there. I feel like it would fit. So like at Disneyland, they're putting it in Toontown. And like that makes perfect sense. Like of course Mickey
Makes a
and Minnie
lot more
would
sense.
have their own attraction at Magic Kingdom. And like of course they would have it in Mickey's Toontown, which they don't have it at Walt Disney World anymore. But like it doesn't seem like it fits. They just like needed something to put there. And that was just like I feel like maybe the powers that be thought, oh well, if we put a Mickey Mouse ride there, maybe it'll soften the blow that we got rid of this ride that people like. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I also really like I would like to see it go back to like, you know, I was about to say maybe I would like to see it go back to how it was, but then I just thought of what Grace said about Toy Story Land, and I love Toy Story Land. And I love that they're like, trying to build that up. They're building a restaurant in Toy Story Land now, like the Roundup barbecue or whatever.
Hmm.
But that where that's going is like you can literally see where the animation studio was from there. So like keeping that would kind of put the kibosh on the studio. So
Which they
there
haven't.
goes that.
They're not making a Pizza Planet, which kind of bothers me. Which I understand it's from like Andy's backyard,
It
so it's
doesn't
like,
fit
of
the
course, you're not gonna
theming,
have
but
Pizza Planet back there, but it's kind of like you
that
could easily just like walk through the gate and then
Jeff,
have it.
Jeff, it's also because we do not need another pizza place in Disney World.
That too.
There are like
they would have to get rid
400 of
Pizza
them.
Rizzo's.
We're fine. Yeah.
If I may, I have a lot to say. Maybe not a lot, but I have things to say about the Muppet area of
I'll
Hollywood
probably agree
Studios.
with you.
So I guess this kind of goes into what we're talking about of what would stay, what would go. So apparently, when Disney originally partnered with Jim Henson to do the Muppets in the parks, obviously Muppet Vision and whatever. I don't even know what that area of the park's even called. Honestly, so
Grand
like
Avenue.
fake fan right here, Grand Avenue. Yep. So like that was going to be its own land, not just Grand Avenue, but it was going to be its own whole thing. They were supposed to have a full service restaurant where your food would be served to you from rats dropping it down from the ceiling. I,
What?
That's
I
cool.
maybe I
No,
don't have
that's
that
cool.
fully accurate, but your food would be served to you from like you getting it like dropped down to you from the ceiling.
They should do that
Obviously
in
that's
France
very
at
hard to
Epcot
do.
because
I was,
that would be
Yeah,
yeah.
with Remy, that would be
yeah.
sick. Um, but I mean, doing that in the 90s, like very difficult to probably
Yeah.
do the technology. But there was supposed to be a full restaurant, a quick service location, and two rides in addition to um Muppet Vision 3D.
That's
There
a
was
lot of
going to be
Muppets.
there was going to be a Muppets version of the Great Movie Ride.
What?
And yeah, so it was going
That
to
would
be
have been
based,
good. That would have
it
been
would have
good.
been like almost, I don't know if it would have been the same thing or not, but it would have been that, but everything would have been like Muppets
Yeah,
characters instead of like
Muppetized
people.
or however you want to say it.
Yeah. Which
Muppetized.
like would have been, I think that would have been so funny and would have been so cool to do. And then there was going to be a roller coaster of like Muppets race through whatever, maybe based off one of the movies. I don't know. But I definitely think seeing that would have been very cool because that that section of the park has always just been like, to me it's so weird, like because
Just
I've
doesn't
never had
seem
pizza
right.
Rizzo's before. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like why have this whole section for a show that most people go to and sleep in?
Yep. It's like
It doesn't make
it's an
sense.
air conditioning break, basically.
Yeah, I've definitely napped in Muppet Vision before, and I
Oh
don't feel
no.
bad about it. Like
Oh yeah.
I love the show, but I've definitely taken naps in there.
I thought I was gonna agree with you. I I didn't agree with you though. I'm
Okay.
not because I'm not big on Muppets, right? So it's
Mhm.
like I was telling I believe I mentioned this in a past episode. I can't keep up anymore. I can't imagine these guys that have like 500 episode podcast and then Gray and I
Don't
have
repeat themselves. Yeah.
yeah, we're in like the teens. And it's like I don't remember half of the stuff we talk about in past
Mhm.
episodes. Do you, Gray? Do you end up forgetting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally. Yeah.
But anyway, where I was getting at was I think that they should change it to an Avengers campus.
They can't. I've told you this before.
I know. I don't remember why, but I want them to change
Now
it to Avengers campus.
It's because of the
because
contracts
of
with Universal.
yeah. And you know what? I I can't. I love superheroes. I love superheroes. I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and I was dangerously close to bawling my eyes out in that movie.
Fantastic movie.
That being said, I like what Universal has with their superhero island. I think it's so sick. Like
Walking through that
when
comic strip area, yeah,
yeah, it's
super fun.
so cool. And when I think of like superheroes and, comics and stuff like that, that's kind of what I want. I don't know how I would feel. Granted, now I can't judge or say I would dislike or whatever because, excuse me, I haven't experienced the Avengers campus, so I can't say like, oh, that's stupid. I don't like this, whatever. I don't know how I would feel about doing it in like a quote real life thing because I like the nostalgia of thinking like, oh man, like when I was 8 years old, eating cereal, watching, Spider-Man and X-Men on TV when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I want to experience. But that is an interesting point where if they were to if whatever the contract that Universal has with Marvel ends up, canceling or whatever, or Universal decides to move on from that and Disney were to bring it in, that probably would be like the place to do it. It would be the place that makes the most sense.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I will say, so I've been to Disneyland, seen Avengers Campus, and I think it's really cool. I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I really do enjoy it. But the only thing is, I just feel like it's like they call it the Avengers Campus because they don't have anything else to call it, and it's just like a big hodgepodge. It's like, oh, we have a Spider-Man ride and a Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and Black Widow and Captain America fight the Taskmaster sometimes, and here's Pym's Test Kitchen and they're all friends. Yay. And it's like, well, like they're technically the same universe, but they don't like it doesn't
They don't always mingle
mesh
with each other,
super
those
well. Like
characters.
you can tell it's like we just have this stuff here.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's a big hodgepodge. I've never been to Universal, so I don't know what that stuff is, but I feel like it's probably better.
the Universal stuff is very cool. Again, it is kind of like a lot of stuff just thrown together, but it works in a way because in the comic book world, all those characters do all mingle with each other. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are comic books where, like Spider-Man fights Doctor Doom, or like, the X-Men fight MODOK, or like, the Hulk and Spider-Man team up, whatever. I mean, the comic books have been around for so long, there's a million different scenarios where there's not that lack of continuity whereas the MCU been around forever, but we haven't seen all these characters like personally interact with each other as much. So that's where the confusion be. I've heard a lot of very negative things about the Avengers campus, which like I said, I don't know. I can't comment on for certain. But I have heard the Pym Test Kitchen is very cool and the food is good. And that's
Yeah.
cool.
I agree. I agree with all of those things. I just think it's like a weird way to do it, but I like it. Like I think it's cool. But to bring it back to like the original topic here, if you brought in something new like Avengers Campus, would you want it to be more of a thrill thing, like with rides and exciting things, which is where Hollywood Studios kind of seems to be going, or are we still looking for more of the behind the scenes like studio type of like old stuff? Like what is the final consensus of what do we think, where it is, where it's going, where it has been?
I like your idea that you had brought up in the beginning, transitioning from seeing the behind the scenes to putting you into the movie. I mean, I know, every park is supposed to be immersive, but having the Hollywood Studios theme being here are our, very well-known movie franchises that you can be a part of. I think that's a really cool idea. So I guess it would be having, but see, something I don't like about Galaxy's Edge, and maybe this is something that could be, you know, fixed, I guess, is, it has two attractions. One is it's hard to even call it a ride. It's an experience, unlike anything out there. Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah.
It's the whole, just from, I mean, you don't have to anymore, but even just from like getting the boarding pass, like it's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do ridiculous things to even get the boarding pass, and then they call it, and you're like, oh, like let's go, we're getting in there. And then like I don't know if that's how you guys had experienced it, but like for me, like literally from getting the boarding pass to experiencing the actual ride portion of it was an experience, and like getting harassed by the First Order and like seeing the pre-show stuff and getting in that space, like without giving too much away, it's incredible. The whole thing, it's hard to call it like a ride because it's just the whole thing is a ridiculous experience. But then you also have Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which very cool, very cool. I remember walking into the Millennium Falcon for the first time and thinking like, I'm in it. I'm in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And then the experience is kind of determined based off of the people you're with.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I think having a healthy mix of, a couple, maybe like how Toy Story Land has an e-ticket attraction in Slinky Dog Dash, a mid-level attraction that's still very fun in Midway Mania, and then kind of a filler thing with alien swirling saucers, having, something like that, with also having, some sort of character experience, a couple like where maybe some characters just walk around in a world where we don't have to wear masks anymore. They wander around and interact with guests. And then there's, maybe like a small stage show where you can see characters doing certain things, stuff like that, where you can interact, like you see things that would happen like you were in a movie. That was a lot. That was a mouthful.
No, yeah, you're good. No, I think that it's a really good idea, actually. And, when it came to Rise of the Resistance, Grave, you've been on Rise of the Resistance, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Was it your first time just on your past trip or before that?
No. Well, I rode it at Disneyland.
Okay. That makes more sense.
But
okay.
it's the same ride.
Yeah. Cause there are so many people where, especially like when we were working at Oscars, where they would be complaining about not getting the board pass or
like didn't understand how it worked. Like they're like, why can't I just go stand in the line?
And they're like, it's an attraction. You guys are really making it this big of a deal. And I'm like, ma'am, you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge. It's like the opening of a land. And then several months later, they opened up this ride. And this ride is not a ride. It is a 27-minute total experience. Like this is not like, this isn't just some kiddie coaster. Like this is this is huge.
Exactly. And not even like, because I don't remember how long the Great Movie Ride was, but it was this, and I'm not, like I said, not trying to criticize, but it was the same thing the whole time. You got in the ride car, you went through kind of like dark ride-esque style, whereas Rise, it's everything. You have pre-show element where you just like are briefed, and then you have where you move into like it's called like pre-show 2 where you're in the spaceship, and then whatever. I still don't understand how any of that works because that blows my and listen, I've watched enough videos on it. It's still just like I think my brain wants to be ignorant about it to just like stay into that like, oh, it's just the coolest thing ever.
Oh yeah.
But then you walk into that whatever, it's a starfighter or whatever it's called, where you see all the stormtroopers, and you're just like, they're all bowing up on me, like you're in it, like you are taken. And I don't remember if it's different now because of COVID, but I remember the first time when like we were waiting to be interrogated, and I felt like I was back in basic training. Like these first order folks were on me, dude, and I'm like laughing, like then they're like yelling at me, and I was like, yes, ma'am. Like I don't want none of these problems. I've been here before. And it's just it's got all these, and even like the ride itself has different, it's fast and it's slow, and then you're creeping, and then you're up, and then you're down, and you're doing all these different things.
There's so much going on in that ride.
The biggest issue with that from like a not the experience, it's that it can only hold a small number of people. There's like the turnaround for how many like guests it can have like
push
per
through
hour
within a day. Yeah,
it's very small in comparison. Even like Ratatouille, I guess, like does like double the numbers that Rise does, and it's because it's maybe that's not an accurate number, but it can push out more, and that's so there's that coupled with the fact that it is down a lot because it's so technologically advanced. It creates a lot of issues, which is another downfall of Rise, because if you can hold a lot of guests in that does crowd control as well. So you have less guests like wandering around going, oh, like those mountains are cool. Like, what else can I do here? I can get a Ronto wrap. I can buy a lightsaber. I can buy this. I can wander around the marketplace and look at like one store. Like, it just feels like there should be more there.
Yeah. As 2 rides definitely isn't enough. I think that they
Mhm.
should have had minimum of 3 and then at least one, I'll call it a kiddie coaster, like a kid ride, I guess we could say,
Yeah,
because I mean, Smuggler's Run might be a little too much for the younger kids, and then Rise of the
true.
Resistance also. Like if Smuggler's
Mhm.
Run is going to be too much, Rise of the Resistance might be a little overstimulating for really really young kids. So it would have been nice to, um, like how they have like the Hippogriff ride at Harry Potter World
Yep.
for kids. That's what they needed in Star Wars and Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah. If for
Um,
no other reason than just get people doing more things.
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I remember, and I don't remember the full numbers, but when they originally announced Galaxy's Edge, the budget was like double what they ended up having, and they cut a lot of different things out. And a criticism that people have had of the Galactic Star Cruiser is that it's basically just like it's just all the ideas that got cut from Galaxy's Edge, and they're trying to put it into a hotel,
Mhm.
Hmm.
which that's an entirely different can of worms.
Oh yeah, 100%. But it looks like with what we're I feel like I'm slowly maybe kind of figuring out what Disney's wanting to do with this so-called, what we call it, identity crisis. It seems like instead of showing us how movies are made and what they do to create a movie, it's almost like they're switching over to putting us in the movie. So I feel like I'm, talking about it more out loud and not thinking about it inside my own head and hearing you guys' thoughts. I feel like this identity crisis is kind of being solved, at least in my head.
Just slowly but surely.
Yeah. I just feel like they're more so trying to put us in the actual experience, in the actual movie. Like, hey, you've seen this movie. Now we're going to put you in it as best as we can instead of showing you how it was made and what we do to make it look like this behind the scenes and whatnot. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah, and that's kind of like the theme of Runaway Railway too, was like you're in the cartoon, so
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to say Mickey and Minnie end up having trouble, and then we got to go save them with Goofy. And then, well, man, I don't really remember how that
They
ride
cause
goes.
all the trouble.
They kind of,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
they
I was about to
cause
say,
all the trouble. Pluto
was it-
saves the day in every scene. Humble
Shout
brag,
out.
not a big
that's
deal.
right. Mickey and
Yeah.
Minnie accidentally run into the track switcher, and then we go off
Mhm.
the rails.
Oh no, his head's
Oh
bobbling
no!
like that, man. But one thing I do want to say, and I I love that Hollywood Studios does this, but it hasn't been happening this much at Disney. You got to step it up. The interaction with the cast members and like the pre-shows is amazing, and like that needs to stay. It needs to happen more. I remember when I was on my college program, the first time I rode Rock and Roller Coaster, I was like so ready to hear the like, "Hey Steve, how about some backstage passes?" And like the lady didn't say it, and I was like, "Bro, what?" Like, and like the kid that I was with, it was like some kid that I did the I don't remember who I was with. I was with someone who like I was affiliated with at work. I can't remember, but like they said it to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, aren't they supposed to say that?" And they were like, "Yeah, I don't know." But I'm like I'm like that is stuff I need. And there's one for Mickey and Minnie's that like it's kind of
Hmm.
cool. They like talk to Goofy and I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
I
when
agree.
when they do play in on that, it definitely does make the ride experience a lot different. The last
It
time I
makes
did
it
go ahead, Gray.
it makes it more real. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It
it's
puts you
not
in
just
it
like a
more.
video that I'm watching. It makes it
Mm,
more real of like I'm actually interacting with what's going on the screen.
Mhm.
yep. There's a cast member. I don't know his name, but he has been at Tower of Terror since it opened
I know who you're talking
in
about.
1994. And like I said, I don't know his name, but he's like the embodiment of the ride, and it's
Yeah, he's got a
they
blue
need more
name
guys
tag.
like him. Yep. Yep. I
Yeah,
don't know
and
know his
he
name, but
always makes like the creepy face and interacts
he's
with the
like,
guests.
yeah.
He's amazing. Yeah, he's
Mhm,
great.
mhm. He's famous. I don't know. Yeah, not that famous. I don't know his name, but no, it's just because I'm an idiot. But no, he yeah, that stuff like the stuff like that is what needs to keep happening.
Oh, 100%.
I agree.
And before we call it for this episode, I there is one more question. Gray, I also want your input too, because I don't think I've asked this question on that last episode with Hollywood Studios. If they were to expand one more land, or they were just to expand for like one more project, what do you think would be a good project? Just like off the top of your heads.
Do you mean an entirely new park or an expansion to a park we already have?
No, just off of Hollywood Studios. So you know
Oh,
how they
okay.
did Toy Story Land, Galaxy's
Yeah.
Edge, etc. You know, like what do you think would be another good section to expand with?
I personally think there's two options. And one of them has kind of already started, but there's nowhere to go just because of where this area is located. But I think The Incredibles needs something. Like that movie, and now like the second movie, like the franchise is so strong. And the fact that it literally just has an Edna mode meet and greet in Disney World, like in Florida, is just kind of like,
Again,
you
doesn't make
suck.
sense.
Yeah, it's random. It's just taking up space. Like they need to do
I do
something
agree
better with
there.
that. And then the other one is Monsters Inc. Like they could do something with that. Those are my two.
It's funny that you had said that because I was thinking in my head like a Pixar land, like a Pixar area
Mm-hmm.
where they could, and maybe it does replace the Muppets area, but like where you have just Monsters Inc., Incredibles, like other elements from, and maybe incorporating some new things too. But like those two examples specifically because you have the Mike and Sully meet and greet if that's still a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you have the Municiberg or whatever with the Edna Mode meet and greet. Like those are things that people still go to. Like giving big fuzzy Sully like a big hug is amazing. And seeing the Edna Mode, people love going to see Edna Mode. So why not make that it's a beloved movie, or they are beloved movie franchises. People love Pixar, like Inside Out, another big one that people love. Take that stuff and put guests into scenarios where you feel like you are interacting with those characters, you're involved in their story.
So you guys both agree that they should do something Pixar related, at least Pixar related.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would just pick one thing because you don't want it to just be like a carbon copy of like Pixar Pier at Disneyland, because like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
what
you
it
don't want
is.
to be
Like you have
oversaturated.
the Incredicoaster, there's like an Inside Out thing, there's a Monsters Inc. ride. Like you don't want it to just be like the exact same thing. But I just think Pixar, like we have Toy Story Land, but like since Toy Story, Pixar has done so many things. And there's just no representation of it. Like in Magic Kingdom, you have the Merida meet and greet, but like Merida's the only Pixar princess. Like she deserves more than what she has. But of course, we have like Rapunzel and Tiana that both deserve more too. So that's like a whole other topic though. So
That is a very different topic, but yes.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a pretty good stopping point before anything else. Do we have anything else that we wanted to say before we close out on this episode?
I think if we do, we'll just keep going on
We'll
tangents
keep
that don't make sense.
Keep going.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the rabbit hole will just get deeper.
As I say, it's too easy to talk about it. But yeah, we'll go. I guess we'll go ahead and close out there. Found a good stopping point. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast at the Goofy Scoop. You can also find us on Instagram at the Goofy Scoop. Make sure to like our post. We try to post at least once a week. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. And Mike, thank you for being our special guest on this episode today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, thank you for listening, and have a good one.